Social media apps have become an integral part of our everyday lives, and with apps like Snapchat and Instagram dominating the industry, there are other apps that have fallen by the wayside, never to see the light of day. Apps that may have looked great on paper but failed in execution and delivery. So, join us as we take a look at 15 failed social media apps. Number 15. Yik Yak. Kicking off our list is Yik Yak, created in 2013 by two college students. The purpose of Yik Yak was to connect users within the area to allow them to converse with one another anonymously. Think two unknown numbers within 5 miles of each other texting back and forth. The developers' goal was for their users to create more social interactions, thereby expanding their social circles. It was supposed to be the perfect app for anyone new in town, anyone who felt alone or had trouble meeting people in real life. It may have been a beautiful idea, but in reality, things became a bit more sinister than anyone could have prepared for. Yik Yak quickly became popular amongst teenagers and young adults who could post their yaks on the app's community message boards and vote on members' posts. But of course, with teenagers often comes levels of immaturity, and with anonymity often comes toxicity. Cyberbullies took to Yik Yak to harass users and were even able to discover some users' identities. One Yik Yak user even used the platform to threaten to bomb a school. As more and more incidences like these piled up, activists called for the app to be shut down. While the creators attempted to solve the issues with updates that gave the users the option to properly identify themselves, the end had already begun for Yik Yak. The app continued to host volatility, its popularity declined drastically, and in April of 2017, Yik Yak announced that it would be shutting down. Number 14. Ello. With the success of ride-hailing apps like Uber and Lyft in the early aughts, plenty of app developers wanted to catch a ride, and in 2013, the Ello app was launched. Ello was based in London and would be used to help hail cabs in its hometown, and New York, where yellow cabs were historically a much more viable business and means of transportation. Ello was able to raise $100 million in funding and was slated for success. While it initially had 2.5 million users in London, it was much harder to gain traction in New York City. The Big Apple was undergoing plenty of legal issues that made the e-hailing phenomenon difficult to catch on. When e-hailing was finally legalized in New York, Ello took aim at the yellow cabs, leaving the more luxury service to companies like Uber. The problem? If you've ever taken a yellow cab in New York City, you'll know that most of those drivers don't use a smartphone, which was absolutely essential to using Ello. Unfortunately for developers at Ello, they drove headfirst into the market without doing the research and lost big time to Uber and Lyft. And the rest, as they say, is history. Number 13. Rdio. Nowadays, everyone listens to music through an app, whether it's through Spotify or Apple Music. CDs fell by the wayside in the early 2000s, but before the major music streaming services we're familiar with today rose through the ranks, Rdio sought to change the way we listen to music back in 2010. Created by the people who brought us Skype, Rdio was the first music streaming app. For just $5 a month, users had access to a 5 million song catalog and could see what their friends were listening to and connect with them on the app. But with such an awesome idea, where did everything go wrong? The folks at Rdio tried so hard to make the app absolutely perfect that they forgot to build up a marketing team. So while they had a great idea from the start, no one heard about it. The app gained little to no traction and was completely unable to build a user base. It doesn't matter that you've built an app that can change the way we listen to and share music if no one has heard about it. A year after Rdio launched, Spotify reached the United States and completely dominated the market. In 2015, Rdio filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy and sold its intellectual property to the folks at Pandora Radio. Number 12. Ship. The next app on our list aimed to revolutionize the world of e-commerce and shipping. With so much of our shopping done online now, it makes perfect sense. So when Ship launched in 2013, the San Francisco-based developers had high hopes, raising $63 million. Their goal was simple. You take a photo of an item you want shipped. The ship courier will come to you, package the item, and deliver it to the destination for just $5. Think Uber, but for quick shipping and at a great price for users. But the team at Ship quickly learned that $5 a pop wasn't a sustainable price point and quickly went into the red. They attempted to adapt, charging more money for larger or fragile items, but it was too little too late, and with a total of $63 million in venture capital funding, there was an enormous amount of pressure to please their funders. To do so, they expanded from their home base of San Francisco to New York, Chicago, and LA, but this only increased their cost of operations. Since they were already making so little money, Ship quickly crumbled under the pressure. Another great idea that ran out of the gate too quickly. Ship closed its doors in 2018. Number 11. Fab. Another social app with a focus on e-commerce was Fab. Created in 2011, Fab focused on selling goods that were either tough to find or unavailable on other major e-commerce sites. Fab became the fastest-growing startup in the world, raising $105 million in venture capital in just 1 year. Fab had started gaining traction in the US with over 1 million users early on. However, when a competitor opened its door in Europe, the team at Fab felt the pressure and moved overseas in an attempt to conquer the markets there too. This decision would prove to be a pretty big mistake, as they flew a little too close to the sun. Despite a decent user base in their home country of the United States, Fab wasn't yet big enough for that level of expansion, and the move cost them a pretty penny, reportedly over $60 million. They started burning cash they didn't have, assuming that they would quickly make it back, only they didn't. Pile that on top of holding a stock of products that were available on platforms like Amazon, Fab deviated from its original and unique mission, changing its image in the eyes of the public. The rapid expansion and attempt to reinvent itself caused Fab to fail in 2013 and become Hem, a completely different app, in order to stay afloat. Number 10. Auctionata. Launched in 2012, Auctionata was a Berlin-based startup aimed at a more sophisticated and wealthier clientele that allowed its users to bid on artwork and other luxury goods. Another app with very high hopes, Auctionata was able to raise $100 million in venture capital, but its demise came from within the inside. First, there was the issue of the company lying to their user base, providing them with fake reports of sales, leading people to believe the app had much more traffic than it did in reality. Auctionata was also plagued with long delivery times, which is a problem when so many of us are used to 2-day shipping. But what really caused things to boil over was the fact that many higher-ups in the company, including the CEO, would participate in the bids to inflate prices. When the news reached the masses, a lot of users deleted the app entirely. People felt lied to, betrayed, and ultimately cheated out of their money. In 2016, though, in an effort to restructure the already floundering company, the CEO was replaced. But that move proved to be too little too late. Auctionata's shady business practices had already ruined the app's reputation, and in 2017 the company folded. Number 9. Google Wave. Despite Google having a stronghold in the world of social apps, there's one that often goes forgotten. Google Wave was created in hopes of ushering in a new era of how we communicate and work together in the digital world. The app was announced at the Google I/O conference in 2009, and it's probably the most short-lived app on our list. Google Wave would have the obvious features like email, document sharing and messaging, wiki pages, and blogging. They wanted to create a one-stop shop for all of your professional online needs. It took 6,000 developers to create Google Wave and underwent testing with 100,000 users. But Google Wave was offering services that had already existed, and people were using those just fine. On top of that, many testers found the provided services to be far inferior to their counterparts, and the main page was absolutely cluttered with windows and information. Many users failed to see how Google Wave was meant to increase productivity with such an arduous app. 6 months after its announcement, the Google Wave crashed and receded back into the sea of apps, never to be seen again. We're constantly adding more people to the Top 5's production team to bring you all the best content. Be sure to subscribe with notifications on and hit the like button. Number 8. Everpix. Since everyone is walking around with a state-of-the-art digital camera in their pocket, we've all become photographers able to take and store thousands of photos. So when a vacationer, Pierre-Olivier Latour, was going through photos from a trip in 2009, he realized there wasn't a great way to keep all of those memories organized. He came up with the idea for Everpix, an app that would organize the photos on your smartphone and save you the trouble of sifting through and trying to recapture that perfect memory. Everpix quickly gained over $2 million in funding, but spent more than half of that money in app development over the course of a year and a half. Another issue we've seen before was that the Everpix team focused too much time and energy on creating the perfect app instead of focusing on marketing and building a customer base. And while Everpix may have been a great idea, it's hard to get anyone to use your app if they don't know it exists. The photo app market was already oversaturated, with most apps already having millions of users by the time of Everpix's inception. Couple that fact with a year of free use and you have a recipe for a loss of capital. How much did Everpix earn in the end? About $254,000. This left their financial backers very upset and with empty pockets, and the app folded in 2013. Number 7. Path. In 2010, a former Facebook team member and Sean Fanning of Napster launched Path. This social media app's goal was to take the idea of Facebook and dial it back. Instead of having hundreds, if not thousands, of friends in the app, Path sets a cap at 50 friends per user. The logic behind the idea is realistically, most people don't typically have more than 60 actual friends in the real world. Path was off to a great start, getting 1.5 million users in their first month, and even turned down major acquisition offers. One offer came from Google, which valued the company at $500 million at the time. Let's just say they should have taken that money. By 2012, Path raised the friends cap to 150 just 2 years later, in an attempt to keep up with Facebook. But in that same year, however, it was reported that Path was pulling contacts from their users' phone books to recruit more users. An even bigger problem was that so many of these users were underage at the time. They ended up owning $800,000 in fines to the Federal Trade Commission and, in an attempt to stay relevant, allowed users to have up to 500 friends. They knew they were losing and were bought in 2015 by a communications company and closed their doors in 2018. Number 6. Ello. Although the social media app Ello is technically still up and running, like so many others on this list, it has completely fallen into obscurity. Launched in 2014, Ello sought to be what Facebook once was, an invite-only social media platform. The site itself was incredibly minimalist, without a clutter of ad space. And during the mass exodus from Facebook just a few years ago, Ello reportedly was receiving 34,000 member requests an hour. That's when the downfall began. With such a high volume of prospective members, the team at Ello was unable to keep up with the demand. This caused plenty of bugs and left wannabe members in limbo. Despite the increase in popularity, Ello was still in beta testing and run by a small group of people. Because there was zero ad revenue and subscription fees, the team was essentially working for free. Although it never officially closed its doors, Ello completely crumbled, and despite a redesign, never came even close to what it could have been. Number 5. Google+. Years after the failure of Google Wave, the conglomerate tried their hands at social media once again with Google+ in 2011. Another attempt at an all-in-one approach to your homepage, Google+ came with a bit more organization. A drop-down menu gave users access to the people in their network with categories like friends and acquaintances, which were categorized even further into your circle. On top of way too many categories, Google could now integrate with other social media platforms like YouTube and LinkedIn, which gave them access to even more user data. While overall usage and customer satisfaction was low, an article in the Wall Street Journal written in 2018 exposed to the masses that Google+ had exposed millions of users' data for its nearly 8-year lifespan. That marked the beginning of the end, and Google announced that very same day that it would shut down the service within the next few months. By August of 2019, it was over. Number 4. Meerkat. Coming onto the scene in a big way in 2015, Meerkat was a social app that allowed users to either start their live stream or watch someone else's. It was first announced at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, and took the festival and the city by storm. Users were live streaming the festival events all day, every day. The company behind Meerkat, aptly named Life on Air, had raised a whopping $14 million in venture capital for the app at the time. The app quickly became one of the most downloaded apps, but with so much buzz around Meerkat, what went wrong? Today, when you think of a live streaming app, your mind probably goes right to Periscope. While it was still in beta testing, Twitter acquired Periscope, and within days of the announcement, Meerkat users quickly flocked and jumped ship. In the same year, Facebook would introduce Facebook Live, and Meerkat fell to the two social media powerhouses. And although Meerkat may have been one to start the live streaming craze, it left the App Store for good only a year later in 2016. Number 3. iTunes Ping. Back in 2010, the iTunes team introduced a new built-in social component called iTunes Ping. Ping came already loaded into iTunes 10, but was still unable to catch on. It made music recommendations based on what users listened to, let users follow their favorite artists, make posts, and even connect with people who shared similar music tastes. Steve Jobs himself said it was iTunes meets Facebook meets Twitter, but by giving people a platform that nobody really asked for. The catch, however, was that when making your recommended playlist, users were only given 3 genres to choose from, giving them pretty poor recommendations. This left everyone wanting more, a lot more. iTunes Ping ceased to exist in 2012, barely lasting 2 years. To this day, it's likely that most people have never even heard of it. Number 2. Beam. Created by famous YouTuber Casey Neistat, the social video app Beam launched in 2015 with the hopes of creating a more user-friendly video sharing experience. This meant things like live streams and reaction videos, which were some of Neistat's trademarks. And gaining users wasn't a problem considering his YouTube channel already had millions of subscribers. Perhaps the appeal was that video content creation was at the core of Beam's philosophy instead of just an added feature. However, because of a choppy user interface prevented users from seeing themselves while recording and a lack of new features to keep users hooked, interest in Beam quickly waned. The app had about 1.2 million downloads over the course of a year, but it wasn't going to keep the app afloat. It's been proven time and time again going up against the likes of Twitter, Snapchat, and Facebook is a near impossible task. And in 2016, Beam was bought by CNN for a pretty penny in an attempt to attract a younger audience. Despite the acquisition, the app itself ceased to exist. Number 1. Vine. Earning the top spot on our list is none other than Vine. Owned by Twitter, Vine lets users create a 6-second-long video loop, which dominated the App Store starting in 2012. It offered content ranging from comedy to animation to music and was home to millions of videos. It even became a meme itself with people shouting, "Do it for the Vine," all over the globe.
Do it for the Vine. Do it for the Vine.
Before the inception of social apps like Periscope and Facebook or Instagram Live, Vine was also a great way for people to share live news and get their message across to users everywhere. But then why did something so popular and so well received seemingly disappear into thin air? Vine failed to adapt and evolve alongside its users, and Twitter chose to keep things the same instead of conducting the proper market research. So when Instagram came along, it unfortunately spelled the beginning of the end for Vine. Instagram videos and stories simply offered more than Vine could, and users quickly made the shift. Vine, along with all of the created content stored within the app, disappeared unceremoniously in 2016. Watch our binge-watching playlist if you'd like to watch all of our most popular top 15 videos. Grab a drink, grab a snack, and get ready to binge.